Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about The Batman, since it released 2 months ago, and I assume people who want to watch it will have done so by now. Superhero stories, no matter how realistic their presentation, tend to land squarely in the realm of speculative fiction, which is why I'm talking about this film on a channel that's mostly about fantasy and science fiction stuff. This is going to be largely a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, drop everything that you're doing, go watch it, then come back here and watch this video. This also isn't really constructed in any coherent manner, so hopefully my ramblings make sense by the time that I'm finished. So on a broad level, The Batman takes inspiration from several storylines in the comics, including Year 1 and Year 2, which are stories about Bruce's early days of crime fighting, The Long Halloween, and Ego. Now in his second year of being Batman, a younger Bruce Wayne, portrayed by the wonderful Robert Pattinson, has become a symbol of fear for Gotham's criminals. However, beating up low-level thugs doesn't really have much of an impact on the real villains of the city, which is a fact that haunts Bruce as he constantly pushes himself further to help the city. The film opens with someone looking down at Mayor Mitchell, who is concerned about his campaign against challenger Bella Real, who is a really fresh face in politics in Gotham, and she represents hope. His concerns come to nothing because he's murdered viciously by the mysterious onlooker. And from there, the city is thrown into chaos as more important public servants are murdered and their crimes are brought to light. And as the story plays out, Batman comes to see that perhaps the real criminals he should be fighting are the corrupt elite. The antagonist of the film, of course, is the Riddler, but it's a version of the Riddler very firmly rooted in the present. He is a man who has been abused and forgotten by a corrupt system, and he's become radicalized to take matters into his own hands. So that's the really broad overview of the film. Rather than talk through each scene, I'm just going to touch on things that really stood out to me while watching that were either positive or negative. Returning to the opening, I really like how it started with the murder and the focus on the murder weapon, the Tucker, which was actually a really brilliant piece of foreshadowing. Then we shift to a montage of the city, and we get a cool noir-style voiceover from Batman, and we see the effect the bat signal has on the criminals of the streets. This movie really harkens back to Batman's roots as a detective. He journals his accounts every day, he has tons of cool gadgets and pouches on his utility belt. I've always really liked the Batman detective side of things, so it was cool to see that. Following a younger, newer Batman also allows for him to maintain an obsessive attitude, which brings about a new side to his relationship with Alfred. In this, they have kind of a contentious relationship, with Bruce viewing Alfred as a poor replacement for a father, and Alfred viewing that he failed Bruce by not being his father. However, Alfred remains loyal, and he's also a smart and useful character. He really feels like a full person, and he doesn't just solely exist to be the butler. Another element I really like about younger Batman is his partnership with Gordon and watching that develop. We once again come back to Lieutenant Gordon, which provides space for his continued growth in future films, which I'm really excited about. Plus, Jeffrey Wright always puts on a great performance. The Batmobile is really freaking cool. When he's revving up the engine the first time and it stalls, it really drives home the point that Bruce is the one doing the work on the car in this universe, so of course it's going to have issues. And this was actually just a really good way to set this movie apart from its predecessors. Gone are the days of Bruce being able to convert things from an armory into his own arsenal. Now Bruce, and I assume Alfred helps, has to hobble together his own crime-fighting gear. And the car chase scene was really just nuts. It really drives home Batman's unrelenting nature and shows how dangerous his thinking can be. But my one big complaint about that scene was there's a part where some trucks are crashing and everything's on fire and they're blocking his way, but then a ramp conveniently shifts into place for him to launch through the fire. So that kind of took me out of the moment, but not enough to kill my enjoyment. I liked how Selina Kyle got wrangled into things. She works in the drug den of Carmine Falcone, who is the chief crime boss of the city, and is sort of dating another woman there named Annika. And Annika has the unfortunate circumstance of hearing stuff that she wasn't supposed to hear regarding the mayor and Falcone, and she goes missing. So Selina starts off as a kind of resistant helper to Batman, but as the story goes on, she becomes more of a partner, and at the end, she chooses to forge her own path, free from what others might want from her. She also represents a sort of melding point between Batman and Riddler. Like Riddler, she was orphaned, she came from poverty, she wants the corruption to end. Like Batman, she dresses up and skulks around at night, but she's also trying to do some good in her own way. Throughout the movie, the Riddler leaves messages for Batman to decipher, telling him what the next step in his plan is going to be. One of Riddler's targets turns out to be Bruce Wayne, but the mail bomb puts Alfred in the hospital instead of Bruce, and this turn of events allows for a really intense moment later on. After Riddler's arrest, Batman goes to visit his cell, and Riddler starts going, "Bruce Wayne!" him! Like 5 times in a super creepy way. During this, the camera focuses on Batman, who can't even look at the Riddler until Riddler says he was the only one we didn't get regarding Bruce Wayne. And at that, Batman realizes that Riddler is not actually accusing him of being Bruce Wayne. He did not figure out that element of Batman's identity. Instead, Bruce was the only part of Riddler's plan that didn't go the way he expected, which then leads into the revelation that he's going to flood the city. Speaking of that, this movie utilizes a trope that I actually do really enjoy, and that's showing the overlapping ideologies between the hero and the villain. The Riddler wants to root out corruption in the political landscape of Gotham, which is, in my opinion, a great motivation. He and Batman then go about fighting crime in their own particular way, but where Batman straddles the line between good and bad and tries to hold to a code, the Riddler doesn't care and is willing to cross whatever lines it takes to accomplish his goals. For a large part of the movie, it's easy to root for the Riddler's motivations, and that really only changes when his plan goes off toward the end. With the whole city flooding, we go from removing the corrupt elite to punishing everyone in Gotham. And a criticism I've seen of this plan is that it's just a way for a studio to say, boy, that guy makes some good points, but he sure is bad for disrupting the status quo. Because obviously if your villain makes some good points, you have to go over the top to remind the audience that he's a villain. I think that's a pretty disingenuous take on the trope, because anyone who's been on the internet for 5 minutes will understand that sometimes bad people do occasionally make good points. Also, these two characters with similar ideologies basically just approach the saying, the ends justify the means, differently. Batman certainly does want to eliminate corruption, but due to his background, he doesn't understand that the city is rotten because of the people at the top, not because of the criminals on the streets. Plus, those thugs are a tangible thing that he can go out and conquer, whereas he can't simply go beat up the mayor for being corrupt. On the other hand, the Riddler sees the truth and takes drastic measures to change things. Even though I do agree with his motivations, I wasn't really rooting for the Riddler at any point because I don't condone his methods. I'm also a little bit of an idealist, and I want to believe that change can come through reasoned discourse instead of violence, which was why I actually really liked the character of Bella Real, since she was positioned as the genuine politician who cares about people. The movie is fictional after all. Anyway, I don't think the Riddler's final plan was an overreaction to make him seem evil. He was a troubled person who viewed the entire city as having failed him and others like him, so naturally he escalated his desire for vengeance to encompass all of Gotham, not just the corrupt elite. The way the ending plays out also firmly roots this Batman and this Gotham City in the issues and fears of the modern day. The Riddler and others were radicalized through various extremist forums. These were men who feel powerless in their lives, and so they move to take back the power by any means necessary. And because that sort of thing is unfortunately happening in real life, I found the Riddler's plan to be pretty realistic and plausible. Now, I could keep going with more in-depth stuff like this, but I have to wrap up this video at some point, so here's my lightning round of positives. The Zodiac Killer's influence on the Riddler was really cool. Batman's eye makeup didn't disappear when the mask came off, so that was good attention to detail. The soundtrack was awesome. I liked the Nirvana song. I liked Ave Maria as a motif in the movie. Every actor really just brought their A game, I felt like, especially Paul Dano, who's just so good at being weird. I liked Bruce's grimy, constant sleep-deprived look. I liked that basically everyone had secrets that came out by the end of the movie. I like when a villain can set things in motion that go off regardless of the hero's meddling, and then the hero has to react to the plan going off rather than being able to stop it. It's like with Ozymandias in Watchmen, who is one of my all-time favorite antagonists. So obviously I like the film overall. I have a few nitpicks though. At the mayor's funeral, when the bomb goes off and kills the DA, Batman is right next to it and he's knocked unconscious. However, his completely uncovered chin takes no damage and is not burned at all afterward. It seemed like it was always raining in the movie. I understand that rain and darkness quite often make for a more dramatic scene, but I thought the city was just going to flood from the rain before the Riddler's plan even happened. My actual biggest critique does poke a bit of a hole in the plot. After the mayor's murder, Batman and Gordon accidentally send out photos of the mayor and Annika to every major press outlet. Why didn't anyone think to just study the angle of the photos to find out from where they were taken? Because they were taken from the Riddler's apartment, which was discovered to be outside Falcone's club the whole time. If someone had thought about investigating who was taking the photos, they could have gotten the Riddler way earlier on, or at least disrupted his plans more. Even with that though, I still really like the whole movie. It's honestly probably my favorite Batman movie ever, but the really great thing about this movie is that it doesn't retread on the Dark Knight trilogy, so I'm not trying to compare the two of them. And I still very much enjoy the whole Dark Knight trilogy, and I think the Dark Knight movie specifically is one of my favorite comic book movies ever. And at the end of the day, I like having multiple Batman movies that stand up on their own and take the character in different directions. But overall, I love the story, the acting, the return to Batman's roots. Pattinson's performance was great. I was hooked immediately and barely noticed that the movie ran for almost 3 hours. So anyway, I think that's all for today. Anyway, as always, thanks for stopping by my channel. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're interested in hearing more of my thoughts on various stories and updates from my own writing journey. Leave a comment below if you've seen the Batman and tell me your thoughts on it. Where do you see them taking this iteration of Batman next? Or feel free to just say hello. I post new videos on Sundays. Until next time, I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I will catch you here in the next video.